The Martinez Jiu-Jitsu Academy gleamed under gold lettering and polished black walls. Overhead lights cast a steady glow across the yellow mat, thick and gleaming like lacquered wood. Guests in silk shirts and sharp shoes lined the walls, sipping from crystal glasses, murmuring with the smooth indifference of old money and sharper pride. Rebecca sat alone near the edge of the mat, cross-legged, her hands resting lightly in her lap. She wore a plain white jai, unmarked by logos or patches. Her belt matched, white but softened with time, its edges slightly frayed. Her long blonde hair draped loosely down her back, catching the light in faint waves. She had not spoken since entering. No one quite knew who she was. A junior coordinator had introduced her earlier as a guest, then quickly moved on. She wasn't on the demo list. She wasn't stretching, she wasn't networking, she just watched. On the mat, men in embroidered black GEs warmed up with laughs and sharp slaps to the chest. A few exchanged takedowns with performative flair. Marcus, the lead instructor, tall, muscular, with a close-cropped beard, loomed over them all, joking, loudly as he surveyed the room like a host proud of his empire. He looked once toward Rebecca and smirked. She didn't react. Her gaze was steady. Not wide-eyed, not timid, just quiet, tracking every movement like a musician listening for missed notes. There was something about her stillness that made some guests glance twice, then dismiss it. A woman like that, sitting in silence, wearing a GI with no rank, no presence, was probably new or forgotten. And in this place where dominance gleamed as brightly as gold, silence wasn't expected to mean strength. Not yet. "Miss, could you grab a towel?" a man in a gray rash guard asked, pointing to a sweat puddle near the mat's edge. Rebecca didn't move. He waved again, louder this time. "Someone spilled here. Can you clean it before the warm-up?" Another voice chimed in, casual but condescending. "She probably doesn't speak English," someone muttered. "Maybe she's someone's girlfriend, here for the spectacle." Someone laughed near the back. "Nah, no way. She's probably staff or new. That belt's never seen a roll." Rebecca sat quietly, legs folded, her gaze fixed on the center of the mat. Her white guy looked freshly laundered, but worn soft by time. The belt had no creases, but bore the gentle shine of age. Her hands remained relaxed in her lap. A young instructor carrying a clipboard walked by and smirked. "You here for the free trial?" "Sweetheart," she said nothing. To her left, a pair of junior students whispered and pointed. One held up his phone, filming a slow, theatrical pan across her body as she sat quietly. "Yoga class crashed the mat," he captioned, adding laughing emojis as he hit upload. Marcus, now standing at the center in his black GI with gold-threaded embroidery, scanned the room with casual command. He stretched one arm, rolled his shoulders, then looked over toward Rebecca. "You," he said, loud enough to carry. "We need a body for the warm-up demo." Some guests clapped. A few chuckled. One man raised his glass in mock salute. Rebecca didn't move. "She can't hurt anyone," Marcus added, flashing a grin. "Let her be the uke. We'll keep it light. Make the warm-up funnier." Someone shouted, "Put the yoga girl on her back." Another voice added, "Just don't break her. We need her for janitor duty after." The laughter grew louder, sharper. Rebecca's breathing remained steady, but something flickered behind her eyes. Not fear, but recognition. She had heard this before in different words, different places, the sound of people who mistook stillness for weakness. Still silent, Rebecca stood. She moved slowly, deliberately, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear as she stepped onto the mat. The yellow surface glowed beneath the overhead lights. Around her, dress shoes, leather loafers, and sneakers crowded the edge. Phones were raised, filming. As she walked to the center, her bare feet made no sound. Her GI hung loose but fitted. Her eyes never left Marcus's chest. Not his face, not his hands, but the center of his movement. The crowd's laughter continued, but something had changed. Her silence wasn't submission anymore. It was preparation. Marcus approached with a casual bounce to his steps. He cracked his neck, then made an exaggerated show of rolling his shoulders as if warming up for a professional bout. "I'll go easy," he said to the crowd, then looked at her. "Don't worry, I won't toss you too hard." Rebecca didn't respond. She stood barefoot, her feet light on the surface. Her GI hung loose but fitted. Her eyes never left Marcus's chest. She didn't raise her arms or bounce on her toes. She didn't posture. To the crowd, she looked paralyzed. To Marcus, she looked fragile. "She's got the posture of a mannequin," someone called out. "Bet she's never rolled once in her life." "Did someone lose their intern?" another asked, drawing more laughter. One woman leaned toward her friend, voice dripping with disdain. "Who shows up to a place like this with a white belt and no patch? She looks like she wandered in off the street." A man at the far end of the room turned his phone to record, whispering into the camera. "Demo time. They're going to fold her like laundry." But Rebecca had heard whispers like these before. In her mind, she was somewhere else, a place where criticism came not from cruelty, but from care, where silence wasn't mocked, but cultivated. Her teacher had once told her, "The loudest voices often have the least to say. Listen to what they don't understand about themselves." "Ready?" Marcus asked, smiling as he shifted into stance. Rebecca gave a single nod. He stepped forward and circled her once, his movements slow and theatrical. The crowd chuckled again. He lunged lightly toward her hip. She turned, allowing his hand to miss, then stepped back to center. "Slippery already," he joked. "Not bad." Someone whistled. She blinked. "Careful! She's got invisible stripes," came another voice. More laughter. Marcus feinted again. This time he grabbed her sleeve. She didn't resist, just turned with him, her stance adjusting like a reed in wind. The grip slipped, and he lost his balance, for a beat before resetting. His brow furrowed slightly. He hadn't expected that. He came again, a little harder this time, a sharp grip to her collar. She moved with him again, not resisting, not pushing. He staggered half a step before regaining control. The laughter slowed. He shot her a sharper look. "You're quick," he muttered. Rebecca stood still, her breathing unchanged. In her peripheral vision she noticed something that made her pulse quicken. Not fear, but recognition. Near the back, Wall, an older man in a simple black guy, watched intently. His patches were faded, his belt worn smooth. He wasn't laughing. "All right," Marcus said louder. "Let's give the people something." He stepped in again, this time aiming for a proper takedown, an inside trip. His foot swept toward hers. She didn't block it. She simply wasn't there anymore. He turned and missed completely. The force of his own movement carried him forward. He stumbled. Someone in the audience gasped. "She moved," one person asked. "She barely did anything," another replied. Phones kept recording, but the energy had shifted. The laughter wasn't as easy now. Marcus looked back, cheeks flushed. He raised both hands, serious now. "Okay," he said. "One more." He charged, not recklessly, but with intent. He reached for her lapel, drove his weight forward, ready to muscle her down with a shoulder lock. Her body rotated. She didn't counter. She redirected. He lost contact. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. One woman lowered her phone. Marcus stumbled forward, and Rebecca returned to her place, her feet gliding softly across the yellow mat. Her hands still hadn't risen. The older man near the back stepped forward slightly, his expression unreadable. Rebecca caught his movement, and felt something stir in her chest, not hope, but possibility. Marcus took a breath and reset his stance. He barked something to the crowd, but they were no longer laughing. Some stood straighter, others narrowed their eyes, confused. A man near the back whispered, "This isn't a joke." A student whispered to his partner, "Why isn't she striking?" Marcus hesitated. He looked down at the mat, then at her. Rebecca's face showed nothing, not strain, not fear, not victory, just breath, just stillness. She waited. So did everyone else, and the silence that followed was louder than the laughter had ever been. "Just keep your hands up, little bird," Marcus said with a forced smirk, circling slowly. His tone was casual, but sweat had begun to bead on his forehead. The confidence in his voice bordered on desperate now, not smug. The crowd offered scattered chuckles, relieved to see the show resume. The tension from her earlier evasion had unsettled the rhythm. Now they expected a return to dominance. Rebecca stood with her feet gently placed on the yellow mat, her arms at her sides, her eyes following his chest. She didn't raise her hands. She didn't speak. She breathed slowly, deliberately. Marcus lunged low, aiming for a foot sweep, her heel lifted before contact, pivoting her weight fluidly. His hand brushed air. He reset with a shrug. "Lucky timing," he said to the crowd, forcing a laugh. "She's slippery." Another attempt, this time a sharp grip to her shoulder. His fingers closed around fabric. She turned with him. No resistance, no pushback, just absence where he expected tension. He frowned, readjusted. A more deliberate step now. An inside trip, aiming to off-balance her. She sidestepped the pressure. He stumbled half a foot, recovered quickly, trying to mask the misstep with a chuckle. "Okay," he muttered. From the edge of the mat, the crowd quieted. No one laughed this time. Phones stayed raised, but some eyes narrowed, uncertain. The older man Rebecca had noticed earlier, Master Rodriguez, stepped closer to the mat's edge. His weathered face was stone, but his eyes held recognition. He had seen this before, decades ago, in a different place, with a different teacher. Marcus attacked again, a shoulder grip with an arm drag. Rebecca flowed with it, redirecting his energy with a pivot. His own motion carried him further than intended. He grunted, stumbled forward, and turned with a flicker of frustration. She hadn't touched him, still hadn't raised her arms. His breathing quickened. He approached again, tighter now, no smile. A grip to her lapel, deep and controlling. He pulled. She moved, not away but with the pull, turned empty. His momentum shifted without resistance. He nearly tripped. He stepped back, adjusted his belt, wiped his brow. "She's not doing anything," someone whispered. "Exactly," someone else murmured. Marcus's jaw tightened. He glanced at the edge of the mat where Master Rodriguez stood, watching silently. For a moment, their eyes met. Rodriguez's expression was unreadable, but something passed between them, a question Marcus couldn't answer. Another grip, another redirection. Again, no contact from her, just space and breath. His movements grew sharper, rougher, a grip behind. Her neck now, aiming to break her posture. She rotated with the pull, slipped his line, and stood in perfect balance beside him. He panted. Rebecca blinked slowly, her breathing unchanged. "You're playing games," he growled under his breath. She remained still. The crowd had gone completely quiet now. Even the phones had stopped recording. This wasn't entertainment anymore. It was something else, something they couldn't name, but could feel. Marcus stepped back, reset his stance, eyes narrowed. The gold embroidery on his GI caught the light, but it felt less impressive now, more like costume jewelry than a crown. Then he charged, a full-speed clinch, both arms out. He aimed low, driving for a leg pick. A powerful, sweeping motion meant to take her down hard and fast. Rebecca moved one step to the left. Not a dodge, a redirection. His arms met empty space. His balance failed. His speed betrayed him. Marcus crashed forward, chest first, onto the yellow mat. The impact echoed like a thunderclap through the silent room. Rebecca stood exactly where she had been, her hands still at her sides. No one spoke. Marcus stayed down for a second longer than necessary. When he pushed himself up, his face was red, not just from exertion, but from something deeper. Humiliation. The crowd didn't cheer. No one clapped. One person lowered their phone slowly. Another swallowed hard, unsure of what they were seeing. Master Rodriguez took a step forward, his expression shifting from stone to something softer, respect perhaps, or remembrance. Rebecca took a small step back, letting Marcus rise unchallenged. She didn't turn away. She didn't bow. She simply breathed. The silence stretched, heavy and profound. In that moment, everyone in the room understood that they had witnessed something they didn't have words for yet, but they would remember it. Marcus remained seated on the mat, his head bowed, sweat clinging to his jawline. He didn't look at her. Around the room no one moved. The silence pressed against the walls, heavy and uncertain. One black belt at the far end of the academy spoke quietly, almost to himself. "What was that?" No one answered. From the edge of the room? Master Rodriguez stepped forward. His footsteps were deliberate, slow. He walked barefoot across the mat, his black GI open at the collar, embroidered in gold. His expression was unreadable as he crossed the space between them, the crowd parting without instruction. He stopped in front of her. Rebecca remained still. The two stood facing each other beneath the warm lights. Behind her, the Academy's golden logo glowed against the black wall. The contrast framed her like a silhouette from an older world. Rodriguez bowed, not a nod. A full, deep bow, shoulders bent, head lowered, hands loose at his sides. "Rebecca Martinez," he said quietly, his voice clear and reverent. "The last of the mountain lineage." The words fell into the silence like stones in still water. Gasps rose from a few corners. Someone dropped their water bottle. Another student lowered his phone without realizing it. Rebecca returned the bow, graceful, controlled, still silent. Whispers bloomed like flowers after rain. "Mountain lineage? I thought that was a myth. She didn't strike. She didn't even touch him." "How did she—" Rodriguez lifted his head, his eyes meeting hers. "I had no idea you'd returned," he said, regret lining every syllable. "If I had known, I would never have allowed this." She said nothing. Her silence was not cold, it was complete, like a master's final answer. Marcus looked up then, eyes wide but unfocused. He started to rise but stayed kneeling. He wiped his brow with the edge of his sleeve, his breathing still uneven. He did not speak. Master Rodriguez turned slightly, addressing the room without raising his voice. "Rebecca trained under Master Williams, the old mountain lineage. No ranks, no competitions, just flow, breath, presence." A few nodded slowly, others looked down. In the quiet, the academy felt like a different place, less performance, more reverence. Rodriguez looked back to her. "We thought it was gone," he said. "Williams passed years ago." For a moment, Rebecca's gaze softened. A flicker of memory passed across her face, brief and unspoken. The scent of rain on stone, mist curling through pine trees, her bare feet tracing patterns in morning light as Williams moved beside her, saying nothing. She had trained without belts, without praise, just the sound of breath, movement, the path of least resistance. Rodriguez bowed again, slower this time. "I'm sorry," he said, "for what happened here tonight." Rebecca inclined her head once. Acknowledgement, not bitterness. Behind her, the golden logo still glowed on the black wall. Marcus sat below it, shoulders slumped, his GI damp with sweat. His hands rested on his knees, unsure of what to do with them. The room had transformed. What had begun as entertainment had become something sacred. The students who had laughed now stood in respectful silence. The phones that had recorded mockery now captured reverence. One by one, they began to understand what they had witnessed. Not a demonstration of technique, but a glimpse of something pure. Martial arts as it was meant to be, before ego, before competition, before the need to prove anything to anyone. Rebecca stood alone in the center of the mat, the soft white fabric of her GI catching the light. She had made no sound, had issued no challenge, yet something fundamental had shifted in the room. Respect didn't rise in cheers. It seeped in like heat. One junior student lowered his head. Another followed. The old rules, the loudest voice, the heaviest throw, the highest rank, had lost their weight, and in their place stood a woman in a plain white GI, hands at her sides, still breathing like the wind. The silence held like a sealed room. Around the edge of the mat, shoes remained still. Phones stayed lowered, and eyes shifted between the woman in white and the man who could no longer look up. Something had changed. Everyone felt it. No one could name it yet. But they would carry it with them long after the lights went out. No one moved. The silence held like a sealed room. Around the edge of the mat, shoes remained still. Phones stayed lowered, and eyes shifted between the woman in white and the man who could no longer look up. Then, a small movement. One student, barely 14, his belt still stiff, stepped forward. His hands trembled as he bowed low. He held the posture longer than necessary, as if unsure how to rise from it. A black belt near the back cleared his throat, voice low. "I filmed it," he said. I'll delete it." Another beside him nodded. Slowly. No one corrected him. No one laughed. Marcus took a breath and stood, his steps toward her uneven, heavy. He stopped 2 feet from her, then dropped to one knee, his head lowered, hands on his thighs. The gold logo glowed behind him like a quiet confession. "I didn't understand," he said. "I still don't, but I saw it." Rebecca stood at the center of the mat, her white eyes soft at the collar, her belt untied now, hanging loose at her waist. Her hands rested calmly at her sides. "Will you teach me?" he asked, voice tight. She looked at him, her expression unreadable, then gave a single nod. Not approval, not forgiveness, just clarity. Master Rodriguez stepped forward. "You carry a path we forgot," he said, loud enough for the room to hear. "You are its keeper now." He paused. "I offer you a place here. Senior lineage holder. We would be honored to learn from you." Rebecca shook her head once. "No rank," she said softly. "Just time on the mat." The words dropped into the silence like a stone in still water. No one spoke. Then the student who had bowed first lowered himself again. Another followed, and another. It moved like wind. Quiet and uncontested. A ripple of bowed heads, knees touching mat. Black belts, blue belts, instructors. Some with pride in their posture, others with regret, none with defiance. One woman stood near the wall, her phone recording silently now. No. Caption no filter. Just the truth as it was unfolding on a yellow mat beneath gold light. Rebecca stood in the center, surrounded by humility. She had never raised her voice, never issued a challenge, never asked for anything, and yet they bowed. Not to a rank, not to a title, to something they hadn't seen before and couldn't deny now. In the dressing room afterward, Rebecca sat on a metal bench, her white GI folded neatly in her lap. Her hands moved with practiced ease, smoothing the fabric one crease at a time. Beneath that calm rhythm, a small tremor moved through her fingers. Barely. Visible. It wasn't fear. Just the weight of what silence had cost her. Beside her feet her bag lay open, soft with age, the same one she'd carried in the mountains. She paused, her thumb resting on the frayed edge of her belt. It was warm from her skin, the cotton worn thin. She brought it into both hands, holding it quietly for a long breath. In her mind the mountain air returned, crisp, still. She remembered the scent of pine soaked in rain, the sound of her teacher's steps on old wooden boards. No audience, no ceremony. Just the rhythm of breath and earth and time. On her final morning there, Williams had stood beside her as the fog lifted from the trees. "Don't defend a name," he had said. "Just move." Rebecca folded the belt slowly, then set it in her bag. The door creaked open. She didn't turn. A voice, soft and uncertain, spoke from the hallway. "Will you come back tomorrow?" She looked over. The boy who had bowed first stood there, his shoes still untied. He was barely taller than the doorframe, his voice still settling into its strength. She studied him for a moment, then nodded once. "Only if I can clean the mats first." He blinked, confused at first, then he smiled. It didn't fully reach his eyes, but it tried. He bowed without another word and disappeared down the hallway. Rebecca sat for another minute, letting the silence settle. She tied her bag shut and stood, her footsteps soft on the floor. The mirror caught her reflection, face calm, posture grounded, hair loose over one shoulder. She looked older than she had that morning, but also lighter. As she stepped into the hallway, she passed the long glass case of trophies, names etched in gold, belts arranged in rigid sequence. She paused only once to glance at them, then walked on. From beyond the doors, laughter echoed faintly. Not sharp, not cruel, just people talking. The sound filled the space between footsteps like something slowly healing. She moved quietly down the corridor, her fingers brushing the wall once as she passed, not for balance, just to feel that it was there. No applause waited outside, but neither did resistance, only the gentle hum of the building settling into night. Rebecca walked through the narrow streets of Austin, barefoot, her GI folded under one arm. The pavement was still warm from the day. Lights flickered from closed shops and the city pulsed in the distance with the low hum of late traffic. It was past midnight and the world behind her felt distant, like a sound already fading. Above her, unseen by choice, the internet surged. Clips from the academy spread across platforms like sparks in dry grass. She never attacked. The woman in white. What style was that? Thousands commented, some with reverence, some with disbelief. Memes posted, offers flooded in, journalists speculated, forums filled with diagrams trying to name what had no name. Rebecca didn't read any of it. She didn't carry a phone. At the corner, she turned into a faded stairwell and began to climb. The concrete steps curved upward, 5 flights, each one creaking beneath her weight. The rail was rusted at the seams, still cold with night air. A single bulb lit the landing, its glow soft and flickering. At the top, the rooftop opened wide. Under the sky, laundry lines swayed lightly, their cords humming in the wind. The city spread below her in scattered light, buildings rising like silent thoughts against the dark. She set her GI down near the wall and stepped into the open. Her feet found the rhythm first. Slow pivots, measured breath, each movement soft and precise. Her hands followed, gliding without force, tracing invisible arcs through the air. She moved in silence. Not for display, not for memory, just the loop she'd learned to carry forward. Above her, the moon cast pale silver across her shoulders. Each turn caught a different angle, a quiet silhouette in motion. The concrete cooled. Beneath her soles, in the distance, a billboard flickered with grainy footage from the demo, her white GI blurred in motion. The clip had no sound, just overlay text and swipes of light. She didn't look toward it. She didn't need to. The wind rose slightly, brushing her hair back from her face. She moved through the air without pushing it, each step falling exactly where it had to. The lines she followed weren't visible. They were felt. Her arms circled low, then lifted with the breath. Her body leaned, adjusted, returned. There was no beginning, no end point, just the rhythm passed down in silence. No one watched her from the streets below. No one stood at the stairwell door. The rooftop held only her, the wind, and the rhythm she kept. In the world below, names were made, brands were built, and stories spun louder than the truth inside them. Up here, there were no names, just movement. The breath she took next was slow and even, the kind that didn't rush. She turned one more time, then stood still, the wind tugging softly at the hem of her pants. She looked up once at nothing in particular, then she bowed to the sky and kept moving. 3 floors below, in a cramped apartment that smelled of instant coffee and ambition, Danny Martinez, no relation, hunched over his laptop. The video had been uploaded 6 hours ago, and the views were climbing faster than anything he'd ever seen. Rebecca Martinez destroys black belt without throwing a punch. The title felt cheap, but it worked. Danny had been a martial arts blogger for 3 years, chasing viral moments and controversial takes. This was different. This was real. He paused the video at the moment Marcus hit the mat, studying Rebecca's expression. Calm, unchanged, like she'd known exactly what would happen. The comments were pouring in. Most were the usual mix of admiration and skepticism, But buried in the noise, Danny found something interesting. A comment from an account with no profile picture. She trained with Williams, mountain lineage, thought it died with him. This changes everything. Danny screenshotted the comment, then started digging. Master Williams, mountain lineage. The search results were sparse. A few academic papers on traditional martial arts, some forum discussions about lost styles, and one obituary from 5 years ago. Thomas Williams, 73, died peacefully at his home in the Blue Ridge Mountains. A lifelong martial artist, Williams was known for his unconventional teaching methods and his belief that true mastery came from understanding rather than domination. He is survived by his students who continue to carry his teachings forward in their own ways. No mention of Rebecca, no mention of a lineage, but Danny had learned to read between the lines. This wasn't just about technique, this was about philosophy, about a way of moving through the world that most people had forgotten. He started typing. On the rooftop, Rebecca continued to move. The wind carried sounds from the city below, sirens, car horns, the distant hum of humanity going about its business. But up here, in the space between earth and sky, there was only the rhythm. She didn't know about the videos. She didn't know about the comments, the articles, the sudden surge of interest in her teacher's methods. She didn't know that in gyms and academies across the country, people were trying to replicate what they'd seen, missing the point entirely. She only knew the movement, the breath, the quiet certainty that came from years of practice without an audience. As the first light of dawn began to creep across the horizon, Rebecca finished her routine. She stood still for a moment, feeling the city wake up around her. Somewhere below, people were starting their day, making coffee, checking their phones, preparing for another day of noise and haste. She picked up her GI and made her way to the stairwell. There was work to do. Not the kind that made headlines or gathered followers, but the quiet work of teaching, of showing people that there was another way to move through the world. The academy would be opening soon, and she had promised to clean the mats. The Martinez Academy was empty when Rebecca arrived at 5:30 a.m. She used the keymaster Rodriguez had given her the night before, a small gesture that spoke volumes about the shift that had occurred. The mats were already clean, but she mopped them anyway. The repetitive motion was meditative. Each stroke of the mop, a meditation in itself. She moved in the same rhythm she'd practiced on the rooftop, unhurried, deliberate, present. By 6 a.m., the first student arrived. It was Tyler, the 14-year-old who had bowed first the night before. His gi was freshly pressed, his belt tied with the careful precision of someone who still found significance in small rituals. "Good morning," he said quietly, bowing as he entered. Rebecca nodded, continuing to clean. "Can I help?" She handed him a spray bottle and a cloth. Together they worked in comfortable silence, cleaning mirrors and organizing equipment. When they finished, Rebecca sat on the mat, cross-legged, and Tyler followed her lead. "What do you want to learn?" she asked. Tyler's eyes were bright with expectation. "That thing you did last night. How you moved. Can you teach me that?" Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. "What did you see?" "You didn't fight him. You just moved. And he couldn't touch you." "And what did you learn from that?" Tyler frowned, thinking, "That you don't always have to fight back?" "Sometimes the strongest response is no response at all," Rebecca said. "But that's not a technique. That's a way of being." More students began to arrive. Word had spread quickly through the local martial arts community. Some came out of curiosity, drawn by the viral videos that had exploded across social media overnight. Others came with deeper questions, sensing that something significant had happened. Marcus arrived at 7 a.m., his usual swagger replaced by something more humble. He bowed deeply to Rebecca, then took a seat among the students. The role reversal was striking, the head instructor learning from the woman he had tried to humiliate. "I've been thinking about last night," he said, "about what happened. I've been training for 15 years, and I've never seen anything like it." "What did you see?" Rebecca asked, the same question she had posed to Tyler. "I saw someone who didn't need to prove anything, someone who was so confident in their ability that they didn't need to use it." Rebecca nodded slowly. The mountain teaches us that the strongest trees are the ones that bend with the wind. They don't break because they don't resist what they cannot change. She stood, moving to the center of the mat. Come, she said to Marcus. Show me what you know. Marcus hesitated. I don't want to. I'm not asking you to attack me, Rebecca said gently. I'm asking you to show me your jujitsu, your real jujitsu, not the performance version. He approached her slowly, then demonstrated a basic guard pass. His technique was solid, practiced, but Rebecca could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he forced the movement rather than allowing it to flow. You're fighting the technique, she observed. It should feel like water finding its way around a stone. She placed her hands lightly on his arms, guiding him through the movement again. This time, it was smoother, more natural. Feel the difference? Marcus nodded, his expression thoughtful. It's like I was trying to muscle my way through instead of finding the path. Exactly, the path is always there. We just have to be quiet enough to find it. Over the next hour, Rebecca worked with each student individually. She never demonstrated flashy techniques or complex submissions. Instead, she focused on the fundamentals: breathing, posture, the subtle art of listening to your opponent's movements. The most important thing, she told the group, is to understand that jiu-jitsu is not about domination. It's about harmony. It's about finding the balance between force and yielding, between action and stillness. A new student, a woman in her 30s named Sarah, raised her hand. But what about competition? What about winning and losing? Rebecca smiled. What is winning? If you defeat your opponent through anger, through the need to prove yourself superior, have you really won? Or have you just fed the part of yourself that will never be satisfied? But, Sarah pressed, sometimes you have to fight. Sometimes you have to defend yourself. Of course, Rebecca agreed. But there's a difference between defending yourself and trying to destroy your opponent. Last night I defended myself. I didn't try to hurt Marcus. I simply showed him that his aggression was unnecessary. Marcus, who had been listening intently, spoke up. You made me look foolish, but you didn't humiliate me. There's a difference. Exactly. Humiliation comes from the need to elevate yourself by diminishing others. That's not what martial arts is about. As the session continued, something beautiful began to emerge. Students who had been focused on technique began to pay attention to their breathing. Those who had been aggressive began to move with more sensitivity. The entire atmosphere of the academy shifted from one of competition to one of cooperation. By 9 a.m., word had spread beyond the academy. Rebecca noticed cars pulling up outside, people with cameras and notepads. The viral videos had attracted attention from local news stations and martial arts publications. Rebecca, Master Rodriguez approached her quietly. There are reporters outside. They want to interview you about last night. She looked toward the windows where she could see people gathering. I didn't come here for that. I know, but maybe this is an opportunity to share what you've learned, to help people understand. Rebecca was quiet for a long moment, watching her students practice. Tyler was working with Sarah, moving slowly and carefully, paying attention to her reactions. Marcus was helping a newer student with a basic position, his earlier aggression replaced by patience. The mountain doesn't speak, she said finally. It simply is, and people come to it when they're ready to listen. Rodriguez nodded. The choice is yours, but whatever you decide, you have our support. Rebecca looked around the academy, at the students who had begun to understand something deeper than technique, at the space that had been transformed from a place of ego into a place of learning. No interviews, she said, but if they want to watch, they can watch. Sometimes the best teaching happens in silence. 3 months later, the Martinez Academy had become something unprecedented in the martial arts world. Students traveled from across the country to train there, not for the chance to learn flashy techniques or to boost their competitive records, but to experience something that had been lost in most modern dojos: authentic martial arts philosophy. Rebecca never took a formal teaching position. She simply showed up each morning at dawn, cleaned the mats, and sat quietly until students arrived. Some days she worked with beginners, helping them understand the basics of movement and breathing. Other days she sat with advanced practitioners, guiding them toward a deeper understanding of what they thought they already knew. The videos from that first night had been viewed millions of times. Articles had been written, books had been published analyzing her technique, but Rebecca remained, largely invisible to the media circus that surrounded her demonstration. "The internet wants to make you famous," Danny Martinez told her one morning. He had become a regular at the academy, trading his role as a blogger for that of a student. There are sponsorship offers, documentary deals, requests for seminars, all over the world. Rebecca was sitting in her usual spot watching Tyler, now a blue belt, help a new student with their first lesson. The boy who had once been impressed by her mysterious technique now understood that the real mystery was in the ordinary moments of teaching and learning. "What do you think I should do?" she asked Danny. "I think you should do exactly what you're doing," he said. "The people who need to find this place will find it." And they did. Former competitors burned out from the constant pressure of winning and losing. Women who had been intimidated by traditional gyms where aggression was prized over understanding. Older practitioners who had grown tired of trying to keep up with younger, stronger opponents through force alone. Marcus had become one of Rebecca's most dedicated students. The humbling experience of that first night had cracked something open. In him, not his confidence but his arrogance. He was still a skilled martial artist, but now his skill was tempered with wisdom. "I was so focused on being the best," he confided to Rebecca one afternoon, "that I forgot why I started training in the first place." "Why did you start?" she asked. "To feel strong, to feel confident. But somewhere along the way it became about making other people feel weak so I could feel stronger." "And now?" Marcus looked around the academy, where students of all levels were training together without the usual hierarchy that dominated most martial arts schools. "Now I want to help people find what I found, that real strength doesn't come from dominating others, it comes from understanding yourself." The academy's reputation grew, but not in the way most successful businesses grew. There were no flashy marketing campaigns, no promises of quick results or guaranteed victories. Instead, word spread quietly among people who understood that something special was happening there. Rebecca never charged for her instruction. When asked about payment, she would simply say, "Pay attention, that's all I ask." Master Rodriguez had initially worried about the financial implications of this approach, but he discovered that students who learned this way were more committed, more respectful, and more likely to become lifelong practitioners. The academy was thriving in ways that couldn't be measured in dollars alone. One evening, as Rebecca was preparing to leave, Tyler approached her with a question that had been weighing on his mind. "What happens when you're not here anymore?" he asked. "How do we keep this going?" Rebecca smiled. "Do you remember what you learned on your first day? That I don't always have to fight back?" "And what else?" Tyler thought for a moment. "That the strongest response is sometimes no response at all." "You already know everything you need to know," Rebecca said. "The mountain didn't teach me techniques. It taught me how to listen, how to be present, how to move through the world without needing to prove anything to anyone." She stood, gathering her things. "You don't need me to keep this going. You just need to remember what you've learned and share it with others." As Rebecca walked out into the evening air, she felt the familiar peace that came from a day well spent. The city hummed around her, full of its usual urgency and noise. But she moved through it like water flowing around stones, unhurried and untroubled. Behind her, the academy glowed with warm light. Through the windows, she could see students still training, still learning, still discovering that there was more to martial arts than winning and losing. She thought of Master Williams, her teacher in the mountains, and the way he had prepared her for this moment without either of them knowing it. He had taught her that true mastery wasn't about accumulating techniques or defeating opponents. It was about becoming so comfortable with yourself that you no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. The viral videos that had made her famous would eventually be forgotten, the articles would be archived, the social media posts would disappear into the endless stream of content that defined modern life. but the students who had learned to move, with presence rather than aggression, who had discovered that strength could be gentle and that power could be quiet, they would carry those lessons forward. They would teach others, who would teach others, and the ripple effects would spread, far beyond what any video or article could achieve. Rebecca never raised her voice, never struck back, never asked for permission to belong. She walked into a world that dismissed her, stood through their laughter, and let silence do what force never could. She reminded everyone who watched that. Real mastery isn't loud. It isn't proven through domination or titles. It's carried quietly, in breath, in patience, in the way you move through humiliation without letting it shape you. Some stories are not about winning. They're about not needing to. In the end, Rebecca had done exactly what her teacher had taught her. She had moved through the world like water, finding the path of least resistance, never fighting what she couldn't change, but never compromising who she was. And in doing so, she had changed everything. The Academy continued to thrive long after Rebecca quietly moved on to other places where her teaching was needed. Students who had learned her methods opened their own schools, carrying forward not just techniques, but a philosophy that transformed how people understood martial arts and, more importantly, how they understood themselves. Tyler, now an instructor himself, would often tell new students about the night a quiet woman in a white gi had walked into their academy and reminded them all of what they had forgotten, that the strongest person in the room is often the one who has nothing left to prove. And sometimes, late at night when the academy was empty and still, if you knew how to listen, you could almost hear the echo of that first lesson, the sound of someone moving through space without disturbing it, the whisper of cloth against air, the quiet power of a master who had learned that the greatest victories are the ones no one sees. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become a part of our Everyday Life Stories community. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. We love hearing from our amazing viewers around the world.